Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma and Brian E. Roach.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Joe Kuzma, and joining me today, finally, as we thaw out from chilly, windy, snowy, cold Buffalo, New York, or Orchard Park, as we should say. Some people get a little particular with that, depending on where you're at in those whereabouts. Brian is where the snow is, but one Mr. Brian E. Roach. What's going on, my friend?
You know, I had made some jokes at work that I was heading into the snowpocalypse and I might not make it home. So, they should just, venture on without me and wish me well. I didn't know that I wasn't joking.
You had a way worse drive home. I'm going back to Ohio, so I'm headed west. Brian's headed east back to Jersey. And basically the storm just followed you the entire way back. Whereas I was able to drive past it at one point and it wasn't so bad for me on Tuesday, but that's why we're delayed here an extra day, folks. We had to recoup a little bit and lick our wounds from a Steelers loss. Season over 31-17 to the Buffalo Bills. But this feels a little different than some of the other season-ending scenarios, and when it's over, because I'll say this much, Brian. The question I will ask for both of us: did you feel that this was a Super Bowl contending Pittsburgh Steelers team?
No.
At any point during this season, did you feel that they were? So, would you say in past seasons, okay, it would be like, okay, they made the playoffs. This is a disappointment. They early exit. I would say going back, losing to the Ravens when they didn't have Bell and he was hurt, losing to the Jaguars in 2017 minus Ryan Shazier, also a very cold game, as I recall, and all those weapons that they had and the way that played out, the COVID year 2020, hosting a playoff game with no fans, losing to the Cleveland Browns after they allowed them to sneak into the playoffs, 11-0 start to that season. I would say those are disappointing. When they kind of eked their way in for the last year and we got some bonus Ben Roethlisberger in the final year that he played, we got an extra game, right? And we had the whole farewell Ben, everything, and they lose to Kansas City. I had no grand illusions that they were going to go toe-to-toe, rock'em sock'em robots with the Kansas City Chiefs, particularly that iteration of the Kansas City Chiefs versus this year, although this year they're a little more, I'd say now they're leaning more on defense than offense, but still with Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, that's a juggernaut. So when you come out to Buffalo, it's yeah, you have a chance, but realistically without TJ Watt, we didn't like that chance as much as if they would have had TJ Watt. So for this team, yeah, you're going to jump in. Well, go ahead. Jump in right there because I got more, of course.
So here's the thing, and we said this at the beginning, and I've been saying this all along. The AFC, there's nobody that is not beatable in the AFC this year. So when I say Super Bowl contending team, what I mean is they could certainly have gotten there and then gotten spanked. Okay, because I don't think they were going to win against the NFC team that was there. Not that the 49ers are unbeatable or that whoever may end up being there is unbeatable. Anything's possible. But the caveat to all that was they had to play perfect, mistake-free football. And trying to do that as many weeks in a row as would have been necessary to get them there, highly unlikely. They didn't play perfect, mistake-free football in Buffalo, not anywhere near it. They are not good enough. They're not that good of a team, right? The offensive line is suspect even to this point. The quarterbacking, even with Mason playing better, is suspect and has been to this point. The defense has just been through a ringer, right? If we had the full complement of the defense all season long, or even just in this game, might have changed my tune, right? You and I were sitting in that lovely, wonderful, air-conditioned to the point where we're sitting there being cold because, as I said to you, they just didn't want us to miss out on the Buffalo experience.
68 degrees cold versus whatever. What was it that they officially had? 17 degrees was the official temp at kickoff.
I just didn't expect to have to sit inside and put a coat on.
I didn't need to, but you were wearing short sleeves, so that's on you. You're in Buffalo. Plus, you didn't know that we were going to have to go walk 2 miles from the stadium. We're planning on parking. We're planning on, we just got to walk to the stadium. We're going to go into a climate control type situation where we didn't have to trudge through the unshoveled areas of Highmark Stadium, formerly Ralph Wilson from years ago. And, I will say it was balmy though. It wasn't like, I think if we were in Kansas City, we would have really froze our asses off, but this was for 17 degrees. It was like, if you're somewhat acclimated, I'm not going to say that Miami would go up and be like, oh, this is comfortable. But for you and I wasn't uncomfortable. It was chilly. And when you get moving a little bit, the juice is flowing. So the weather at the end of the day, the real thing that impacted this game with moving it was routines with the players, particularly a team that's traveling has less of an advantage than the home team would. And you made a great point. This is one of the ones, there's several that need to be thrown out here. There's 3 that I want to make. And then we might go through some of this. Maybe we don't. I don't know. But one of them is, through the game. Maybe 4. Actually, 4. You reminded me because the refs stink, but that'll be at the end. Okay. The job that Mike Tomlin did with what he had. And that goes to my second point of people throwing around the term highest paid defense. At what point was this highest paid defense actually on the field for the Steelers at any way, shape, or form at full capacity other than maybe week 1, which I think, when did Cam get hurt? Week 1, didn't he? He was pretty close around there. And sure. Cam missed, I think, 6 games this year. Minka Fitzpatrick missed 7. Cole Holcomb ends up, by the way, that was a photo of Eric Rowe. You may have heard of him. Practice squad guy making practice squad money, not highest paid. Miles Jack playing a lot of significant time with the inside linebackers all being ravaged. Cole Holcomb, add Quan Alexander, and even Landon Roberts missing a little bit of time. And, like I said, Hayward had to be supplemented.
KZ being suspended.
Being suspended. Keanu Neal getting hurt. Now, Joey Porter, less of a cap hit than Levi Wallace. So even though I got an article coming on this for the website in written format, so you could see some of this ledger when you're comparing the cost. It was somewhere in the ballpark of $35 million to $38 million was missing on the field on Monday. A large sum of that is $29 million to TJ Watt, of course, and having Nick Herbig and Marcus Gold. Marcus Golden's making a little over $1 million. Nick is making a little less than $1 million on a 5th round rookie or 4th round rookie, whatever round he was, rookie contract. So to say it was the highest paid defense, it really isn't fair to say that to the Steelers. This is what's going to be stuck in the annals of the people who like to say mediocrity and Mike Tomlin. This was a team that overachieved. They overachieved with a quarterback that everyone had discarded and all of a sudden loved. You think they underachieved, Brian? I know you're raising your eyebrows. They overachieved.
You said annals.
Annals. Okay. It's not quite the same as when I'm driving and there's that Fudge from Uranus, Indiana billboards that are always out there. So, but this is an overachieving team with not the highest paid defense. Your 3rd string quarterback who hadn't thrown a pass in 2 years. I mean, and an offensive coordinator they fired too.
Yeah. Look. We all bought the hype. As I said, I've said this multiple times this year. We bought the hype during preseason, right? We saw what looked like this tremendous offense that was in sync and just firing on all cylinders. And then we got to game 1 and they sucked. And we're like, what the hell happened?
And then game 2 and then game 3 and game 4. The defense
can carry us. So, I'm going to go back. Is there a point in time during this season I thought maybe they were Super Bowl contenders? Yes, preseason. So, because we were sold a bill of goods, we bought into it. We were like, we forgot. We put our it's preseason blinders and took them off, or put them on, as the case may be, and went, they're awesome. Oh my God, they score every time they get the ball. This is going to be incredible. We're going to win our 7th Super Bowl. Oh my God. No. Then the season came around, and, people are like, oh, this, Joe, we all the whole offense turned into a pumpkin. The season came around, and the offense turned into a pumpkin. We stink. We're horrible. And so from that point on, nobody, I think, really honestly thought they were a Super Bowl contender. The flaws that existed within the offensive structure were just too obvious. And then as the defensive guys start dropping like flies, and you start just missing everything that was going to, because part of you might have still been like, oh, but the defense can carry them if they can just stay close. Kenny Pickett is a wizard at comebacks in the fourth quarter. If they can just stay close, they'll win enough and they'll get there. Well, wait a minute. We don't have any inside linebackers. We got a guy that was working at the Quickie Mart coming in now. What do we do now? And maybe Kenny Pickett can't win in the fourth quarter anymore. I don't know.
Miles Jack was ready to become a plumber or an electrician.
Yeah. Our quarterback was ready to sell real estate.
Yeah. I mean, and let's not forget, Deontay Johnson misses 4 games. Pat Freiermuth misses 5 games. So the offense wasn't like at full power. And here's something else I want to throw in here. So number one, everybody outside of Pittsburgh is saying, what is wrong with yins that want to get rid of Mike Tomlin? And everybody's reporting Mike Tomlin met with the team, said he's going to be back next year. We're awaiting a press conference for that. Another reason we kind of delayed, we thought we may have gotten that already and wanted that confirmed because that's pretty big. The storyline is head coach, obviously the staff, offensive coordinator now, and I'll get back to that in a second. And then, of course, the quarterback situation. But for everyone that's like, hey, if they would have started Mason Rudolph to begin this season, they would have done this and they would have done that. And they would have been like this major, offensive firepower juggernaut. Did you forget that Matt Canada was the offensive coordinator through like half of this season? No, I think Mason Rudolph struggles just as bad with Matt Canada calling the plays. I think that's preposterous. And it obviously is not, it did not help Kenny Pickett if there's any development or progression or anything to be made there. This season totally derailed or hindered, but that young man has to stay on the field as well. So I'm not ready to just be like, okay, they should have sat Pickett. No, that's a first round pick. Your eggs are in that basket. Most people thought, hey, Rudolph's there. They see him at practice all the time. He hasn't thrown a pass in 2 years, but just the fact that he was able to do what he did, having not thrown a pass in 2 years, go out there, light up the Bengals, light up the Seahawks, the monsoon, the elements that he had to play in. And I think for the most part, the response, I won't say overwhelming, but the majority of response, no one's blaming Mason Rudolph for this loss. It's not like he had like a terrible game. And if anything, after the interception I think could happen to anybody. We talked about this. We were sitting right there. This was Deontay. Could you have fought a little bit more for that ball? This was Kaiir Elam, a pro making a pro play. Can Mason maybe, I thought it was a decent ball. Could it be delivered soon? Maybe it's sooner. Maybe there's more oomph. Maybe whatever you might say. That was a turning point in this game. But then everybody sees that, this team didn't give up. They didn't just lay down. Would you have rather lost 45-14, 26-7, 3 quarters without scoring, with the scoreless football like the Miami Dolphins? 48-32, which that was not a close game with the Cowboys and Packers. They got the doors blown off of them. So, and then of course the Eagles, 3 field goals from, they should have drafted Jalen Hurts, should have been a Pittsburgh Steeler. And man, I tell you, there's a lot of coping going on around there. I would at least say with this team that may have overachieved, they may have found some things, they saw some stuff that I think they have something to at least build on, and there's some positives to take away from this, despite the exit in the wild card route.
All right, so I'm gonna come back to the interception for a second.
Okay.
Because as we were sitting there, I said this is what annoys me about Deontay Johnson, is that he always leaves his quarterback out to dry. I am going to now tell you that I've watched that interception so many times because I am a masochist and I just love to hurt myself by watching bad plays. I don't know that I'm going to blame Deontay anymore for that. And the reason is that before the ball, he is falling backwards, and probably at the point that he knows he's in trouble and needs to go for the ball, he can't because his momentum is carrying him back. So I'm gonna give the forgiveness of Deontay Johnson on that. I'm gonna lean more towards pro play making a pro play, and the ball probably wasn't the best placed ball, but Mason is Mason, right? Look, I've said all along. I know everybody was all hyped. Mason's the best quarterback on the team. I'm still not convinced Mason's the best quarterback on the team. I'm not convinced that there is a good quarterback on the team at this point. But Mason played very well for several games. He also has played poorly at different times in his life. So it's not Mason's the greatest. It's Mason had 3 good games. If Mason had 9 good games, maybe I'd change my way of thinking. If Mason didn't do some of the things that I have seen him do in the past, maybe I'd change my thinking. I'm not putting down Mason Rudolph at all. I thought he did a great job to end the season. It does not change my thought process to say Mason should be the starting quarterback or something of that nature, right? I'm not worried about that. I'm just saying, when you look back on it, considering the injuries, considering what you learned during the season, they just weren't good enough. And to have them be where they were is probably more surprising than not. As you say, it's the same thing. This is the same team that lost to 2-10 teams in a row. The only difference was they played a little better on offense afterwards. I don't know whether Mason would have won those games or not. And I can't go back and find out. I know people will be like, yes, he definitely would have. You don't know. Do you have a time machine? If you do, could you please come over to my house? I got some crap I need to go back in time and fix. But
I was thinking the same way. I'm like, does Kenny win those games? Maybe. Does Kenny throw 2 touchdown passes in these games? Like, that's the difference. Is Mason was, he's moving the football. They're able to run the football. Not so much in this game, even though they picked up 106. Warren 8 for 38, 4.8. Najee only 3.1, 12 for 37. Sometimes into a brick wall.
I'll say this: I think Kenny or Mason wins the Patriots game. I don't think they're winning the Arizona game regardless.
Yeah, that's a little weird. And Arizona did better toward the end of the season. We kind of wrote off that Arizona didn't have James Conner for a while, that they just got Kyler Murray back. They'd been playing Josh Dobbs and Clayton Tune, and the team was a little different. I'm not going to say they were like, stocked with all pros and all stars or whatever or what have you, right?
We just can't stress enough the issues that they had across the middle, right? Tight ends were going to eat them up until they started. At that point, they're out without Cole Holcomb. They're without Quan. Landon Roberts is in and out of the games. They just could be had at that point, and they hadn't figured out how to adjust for it yet. And yes, you can say that's coaching. That's on the coaches, but it takes time when you have anticipated having X, and now you have -3.
Yeah, and the Cardinals team too, just to put this into perspective, they had exactly 400 yards against the Cowboys when they beat the Cowboys in week 3, right? That should have never happened, 28-16. They never got anywhere near that. They were pretty anemic, just like the Steelers were, 249 here. There was a game where they only had 58 yards against the Browns. And then they had over or close to it 436, 306, 449, and 466 against the Niners, Bears, Eagles, and Seahawks to close out the season after they played the Steelers. So they definitely turned a corner. They only won one of those games, lost one by a point in division and stuff like that. And so you could hem-haw and whatever until the cows come home. But I don't know. The Patriots game's tough too because the defense just collapsed and made Bailey Zappi look like something different. Coulda, woulda, shoulda. Maybe it would have changed your outlook of the season, but there were a lot of different things. And so we're still at where everybody's like, fire Mike Tomlin. And it's like, look, Mike Tomlin dragged these guys across the finish line, much like how Josh Allen was pulled forward, which I thought you couldn't do on the tush push play on a 4th and 1. And, there are a lot of people. What I'm saying is that the blame probably shouldn't go to Mike Tomlin. Or at least, it can't be solely because you got some guys that are off the streets that are playing against a team that's a perennial playoff and division winner right now. Buffalo's been a Super Bowl favorite for probably the better part of the last 5 seasons. They're going to get another rematch with Kansas City here now, but they're going to play it in Buffalo. So we'll see how interesting that gets. And a great quarterback too, right?
Yeah. Let me ask everybody this. Would you rather have been in a game like Cleveland, like Dallas, like the Eagles, that you were really never in, right? Or would you have rather been in this game where at least at some point for about 10 minutes during the game, you thought, we got a chance?
Yeah.
You know, the final score does not actually reflect easily the game. They spotted them points by, turning the ball over, which they can't do. But they did. And
21-0 middle of the second quarter.
21-0, and yet there's a point when it's 24-17. You're one score out, right? You have hope. You think there's a chance. And with the right things going on, maybe you get there. They just didn't have enough talent to do that as they stand right now. But I will say, as you said, there are positives to take out of this. There are also a lot of negatives. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
They got to fix the offensive line. Mason Cole can't be back. The center position is very weak.
Ed Oliver, right? We just constantly the last few times.
Ed Oliver just ate his lunch the whole game. But Najee is a good back. Jaylen Warren is a good back. George Pickens looks like he's getting mature as the time goes on, and he's a clear number 1 level talent. Deontay Johnson is a solid receiver. There's things to be positive about. TJ Watt should win Defensive Player of the Year. All those things, right? There are positives that can be taken out of this if they get another solid draft. If Omar Khan turns into the con artist again and figures out ways to get some free agents to solidify certain areas of this team. Maybe next year we look at this and go, legitimate. Look, I know we don't want to get into this right now, and we're not going to. But the biggest question that's going to go forward next year is going to be, is the quarterback play good enough to win you a championship? And we're not going to know that until next year. So that's my level of speculation.
That's a very big. We have a much bigger conversation ahead on that. I don't know how much I really want to touch on it, but I would say this is a league where you need at least 2, if not 3 quarterbacks, right? So if you had both Kenny and Mason Rudolph, I wouldn't complain. And I don't know which of those 2 would actually be your one, because there's enough question marks on both of them as to whether or not they can be. And I guess I'll leave it at that for now. Of course, Mason will be.
That's enough right there for me to complain.
Yeah, an unrestricted free agent. Yeah, but Brian, compared to what's available, and let's make it clear, Justin Fields is not available right now. And I don't know that Justin Fields would be an answer either. Is he that much of an upgrade? It depends on offensive coordinators, everything else. Are they going to get somebody in the draft where they're drafting from at their draft position? Is somebody in the draft always an answer? No. You're going to might get somebody worse than Rudolph or Pickett in the draft, even with a higher pick. Yeah.
Right, down the road topic. We should go back and look, because I'm just going to tell you this up front. Until CJ came out, and I said this from the get-go.
Oh, absolutely.
Until CJ came out, let's look at what the rookie quarterbacks from the last 6-7 years have actually won.
It took Jared Goff an awful long time to get where he is with the Lions, and I still don't think anybody is anointing him as the next Tom Brady or Peyton Manning or Dan Marino or anybody like that in that class. But he can win some games. No, I know. We've done this before. We will do it again. We've talked about the Jameis Winstons and Marcus Mariotas of the world, and that's when you're taking the very top picks in the upper echelon, the Trey Lances, the Zach Wilsons, the Sam Darnolds. Who's that other guy the Cardinals had? The Mitch Trubisky's. Yes. I mean, you're not wrong. So, I mean, quarterback could be something that's a question mark, but I think they could win with either of these 2. All depending. It depends. There's a lot of questions.
I mean, I don't want to delve into it. We got too much. We do.
We don't
have enough time.
No, not today. But we do. Hey, hold on. So I want to backtrack. I'm going to backtrack myself. I felt like George Pickens was a little lost in the moment here. And some of that was not his fault entirely either. There probably was a pass interference call missed, more than likely, on that fourth down. When he goes to the sideline and he's throwing his helmets, folks, it's not a maturity issue. Charlie Batch stuck up for him on the post game.
He's frustrated.
Absolutely. He's emotional. Yeah. This is it. This is the end of your season. You're trying to win. Give me that guy every freaking Sunday, every game day. That's the kind of guy I want fighting alongside of me. Have you had any complaints since I didn't want to get hurt from blocking? He's been out there sticking his nose in it now. The guy, he's corrected. He's still young, immature, raw around the edges. It's there. I wish he would have come down with a ball or two more. I wish he could have secured one. The fumble was pretty big. Dug them in kind of a hole that they couldn't afford to be in, like you said. But there were other mistakes the offense made. Illegal shifts. There were also calls. There was things like Josh Allen. What do you think about that? I still think fake slide. I still think he pulls up. I still think he hesitates. I still think that's enough to pause the defense
if he bent his knee more. He
put his foot out. You could see his cleats. His foot was up and out. And his elbow came back.
During the game, that's a white man juke. That's what that is.
Maybe.
And I don't. Sorry, I have to reach down and pick this up because otherwise I'll step on it and destroy it. It's a white man juke. There is, to me, if he went and did like one of these and was like trying to go back a little bit and then kicked up.
He has to do a dab.
Yeah, he'd have to dab. It was not close enough to get called. I know everybody's going to think it is. It's Kenny Pickett's fake slide. Go look at Kenny's fake slide and then look at what Josh did, and it's not the same thing.
Yeah, but you know what? Within that instance and split second, for about 25 years, I had various levels of officiating a different sport where split second, you ID these type of things at various speeds and levels. To me, that's just enough to throw off a defense, and the reason he gets away with that, you know what I mean?
The point that you're right on, though, is that.
Yeah, and they're not going to get flagged or fined.
Part of it, right? As a defensive player in this day and age, you are just flat out screwed, right? Mm-hmm. You're effed. There's nothing you can do about it. If you hit him, you get a penalty and a fine. If you don't hit him, he scores a touchdown. So what are you going to do? And, we have the case in both instances we talked about. Look, Miles Jack hit him after he slid. He did try and come off, but they're going to call that every time because he landed on him with force. He didn't do enough to get a to get a fake slide call. But because the defense is over desensitized to getting penalized for playing the game the way it's supposed to be played.
Yep, exactly.
NFL gets what they want, more offense.
One penalty for 9 yards, though, against the Bills in that whole thing. It's rough. There's, and there's also talk, there was a blatant hold also on that Allen run. And it seems as though there's definitely something going on in the league this year, not just Steelers games. You watch all of them where the edge rushers aren't getting there and are being the tackles are allowed to jump back 3 yards before the ball snapped. They're allowed to hold. They're allowed. There has not been very many holding calls league wide. I'm going to have to be curious as to how many. Just perception. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I go back in the numbers and it lines up and it's on average. But it sure doesn't feel that way. And I'm not just saying that. I'm just saying that I watched other games where you see like Bosa or somebody try and get after it, or Micah Parsons or somebody get after somebody, and they just don't. So that's just one aspect of this. Officiating, I know George Pickens said what he said, probably going to get fined for it, had to play against two teams or whatever. But you make enough mistakes on your own, particularly yourself, George, when you fumble, it's not a good look, that now you can't overcome if there is a judgment call on the field that doesn't go in your favor. And I do say judgment call because some of these end up being judgment calls. There's things that you cannot go rewind and throw a little red hanky out on the field for. I know a lot of people are also hot about one that did bounce in the Steelers' favor and may or may not bounced off of Pat Fryermuth's face mask as we're sitting there watching the replays. So, we do get that one. It could have been a little worse. I'm not going to be, that biased, Brian, is to not acknowledge that you get one in your favor, at least there. And then there's just poor tackling. And then Minka not throwing, Shakir down to the ground. And that was it's sloppy and it's a backbreaker. When you get to that point in the game where you're trying to fight back and you just can't get there. Josh Allen accounted for 3 touchdowns. He only threw for 203. That's where you wanted him at. But the running game, with his big, long 52 yards, of course, 179 yards given up to the Bills. If they're able to maybe button that up a little bit, if they had any kind of way to cover the tight ends, their tight ends almost had 3 touchdowns, let alone the 2 that they had, if not for Landon Roberts making a spectacular play. After, we'll go one more officiating call, because this was after Levi Wallace had to sub in on that play, and they went right to that side of the field thinking Levi might play short, linebacker on tight end. Joey Porter Jr. was not on the field for that play after getting cracked in the back of his head and having to go out for concussion protocol.
And no personal foul was thrown. I mean, that one was pretty egregious. Like, if you followed the podcast for any length of time, you know what I think of the refs, right? But
please tell us for all the new listeners and watchers.
They stink so bad. They're terrible. All of them are awful. That I've been calling for full-time referees. Put them on full-time, make them learn their craft, make them get better, because they stink. Hire younger people. All these old men. I'm old, and I don't want to be a ref, and I shouldn't be out there. I can't see. I can't see anything.
You make a very valid point. I talked about coming from this experience from the officiating world, soccer, college, and professional at different levels. When it's cold out, those human beings, it's worse than being a player, because especially when it's football, because these guys, they don't move as much. Some of your umpires, you're just walking up and down the sideline. It is freaking cold. It's about it being a fan. I forgot who I heard. Maybe it was Larry Fitzgerald on with Jim Gray last night. And he was talking about how, the fans may have it worse. At least we're running around on the field. I'm thinking, well, the officials, you see, what was his name? What was the guy's name that did the, hold on, I've got it here. Let me find it in the book. I don't want to misquote. Referee Carl Sheffers. I should have known that. Super Bowl referee. Carl Sheffers has the full balaclava face mask, and he's got to pull it down for the aspect of TV and be able to speak into his open mic on the stadium announce, just to announce what the penalty is. That dude was cold. And when it's cold, mistakes happen, mental mistakes happen. Everything else, George Pickens maybe doesn't hold on to the ball. The ball's harder because it's like a rock. His muscles aren't warmed up. He's not in a certain thing. And then the routine has also changed from what these guys are doing. Getting massages day to day or whatever. It's just some of it throws them off. It's not excuses, but I'm not ready to lay this just on one specific thing like coaching or I don't know about that timeout with 2 seconds left or whatever the hell that was. I was sitting there scratching my head. Somebody said that they were trying to preserve time because the punter got hurt, pulled a hammy. They signed somebody in Buffalo in place of him just in case too. Presley Harvin III. We're going to be doing exit interviews, I think, Brian, on offense, defense, special teams, whatever.
This one should be easy. This is the exit interview.
See you later.
Out. Bye. Get out. This is the Amityville horror exit interview where Presley Harvin just walks in the room and Mike Tomlin doesn't have to say anything. The whole room just goes, get out.
First punt, 31 yards. Steelers were out to midfield. They didn't have a whole lot. At least it wasn't a 3 and out. They got a first down and then incomplete passes, one batted at the line. Harvin punts 31 yards. It's fair caught. So the Bills started at their own 20. Not bad. It's where normal field goal deal is, but it's 31 yards. You can't get them down to like a 5. You know what I mean? Like within their 10. That's terrible. That's absolutely terrible. He punts 42 to the 27 on the next one from his, little bit better. That was down. That was with a bounce, by the way. Down by Miles Boykin. You look at the other side. Sam Martin punts 47 to the Steelers 18. That one goes out of bounds. Steelers end up turning the ball over, and immediately it was the Dalton Kincaid 29-yard touchdown. Then the Steelers go 3 and out. 1-yard run by Warren. Incomplete pass intended for Pat Freiermuth. Batted at the line once again. Ed Oliver, because he sure as hell wasn't in coverage. And then another tipped ball at the line by Bernard. And then Harvin punts 30, and Buffalo gets the ball at their own 44. And if we continue this, Martin punted 52 yards. At some point, I think he gets hurt here. Let's see where else this ends up getting to. Then there's the interception drive. I'm just trying to see what other ones we have here. Harvin did have a 51-yard punt. Blocked field goal. Actually pretty amazing. That's when you started to think that some things could happen. Steelers get the ball at Buffalo's 33. Pretty decent stuff there. Then Buffalo's trying to preserve a little bit of time, too, at the end of this and double dip because they got the ball for the second half. They call some timeouts, and they actually do get the ball. But they, fortunately enough for the Steelers, they were able to get a sack from Marcus Golden, and then time ended up expiring there. But, yeah, man, I mean, it was end of the second half. Let me see if we've got some other – I don't know how much more. Do I care that much more to dump on them? That was just enough to not flip the field and didn't do the Steelers really the defense any wonders. If anything, they needed a little more help from a guy that could at least pin somebody. This affects, well, let's put it this way. Even with the defense the way they were, Buffalo approaches it a lot different if they're on their 5 versus their 25. As to what plays
35 or they're 40. Yes.
Yeah, as to what plays they're going to call. We saw that happen with the Eagles and the Buccaneers and the safety in that game. I mean, it was just like there's no opportunity for those type of splash plays. And then Buffalo also gets up on a lead because of the turnovers and the ball security issues. And then they could call the game a lot differently when they don't have, the look over their shoulder there as well.
Well, yeah, for sure. I mean, look, I get it. I didn't anticipate them cutting Presley Harvin. You don't mess with the, look, there's a camaraderie amongst your special team group. There's continuity in the snap, hold, kick concept of it. You don't want Boswell to get, out of sync because all of a sudden his holder's different or whatever, right? I understand why they didn't can him during season, right? Why they didn't cut his butt and say, see you later. I can understand that. But as far as next season goes, Presley Harvin should not be anywhere near this facility.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. That's one upgrade that they need. I don't even know like how important he was even to like the Boswell thing. Like I said, Brad Wing had been here for years before.
Yeah.
And we're
it's superstition.
And I get not wanting to upset the apple cart, not, things, there's only so much you could do with the short prep time during the week. Special teams, probably not, they get their own work in, but just, I don't know. It's not something to really go
if
into.
If you were going to do it, you'd have to have done it earlier, right? So that by the time you get to this point, the other 3 have had a chance. Like, I could have seen it when Brad Wing came in to punt when Presley Harvin was injured. Right, he was injured. I'm not being sarcastic about that. He was actually injured. He was hurt.
Sarcasm.
But that would have been the time to just say, yeah, we've seen enough of this, and just go on, and then move forward with Brad Wing again, and go. That's our tandem. So by the time you get to the postseason or the end of the year, but be that as it may. I'm not going to go back in time because I don't have the time machine thing. But he just should not be around next year.
Yep. I'm with you. We've got a lot of things to talk about here in the near future. Possibly Mike Tomlin coming back, possibly what they do at offensive coordinator. If there are more changes on the staff as far as, Eddie Faulkner is probably all right as running backs coach. Do you hire within and piss everyone off? Because when you hired from outside, everybody wanted a college mind, and you got Matt Canada. You know what I mean? You've got you've seen things with the quarterback. The quarterback storylines will be big too, because you've got the guy to develop. Everybody talks about, hey, Green Bay Packers. Okay, they went from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers, and now Aaron Rodgers to Jordan Love. And we really don't know if Jordan Love is going to be the guy. They look fine now. You don't know, looking back on it 3-4 years from now, if you're going to be like, oh, yeah, I remember that guy. And people were talking about that, too. I think that was part of the post game with Charlie Batch, or it may have been like Craig Wolfley and Max Starks were on one of the other Steelers Nation radio shows. And it was like, are you just going to go back and, oh, I remember those few games with Mason. That was fun. Or is there a future there? Or I remember when Kenny made those comebacks. That was fun. And like I said, you need more than one guy the way the NFL works right now. So I have no... We'll talk about the opportunities that Mason might have, why he might not want to come back, et cetera, et cetera. That's another thing that's in the future. We're going to talk about impending free agents. Where on the roster can they make some improvements? Who should or shouldn't be back because of salary cap concerns? They're going to have to clear right now over the cap. I think it has them about $7 million over the cap of what they estimate the 2024 salary cap to be. There's some easy ones, really. Like Allen Robinson doesn't come back. You're back in the black instead of in the red. That's a very simple one. And I think he's in his getting up there in his 30s. What do you got for fresh sarcasm, Mike?
Clearly, Mitch Trubisky should be back. He needs to be back. He needs to be the backup quarterback. And there's no value in saving the $10 million or whatever you say for him. He should be back.
They're eating a little bit too much money with him, and I'll get into those figures when we talk quarterbacks. I think if you want to do this dog and pony show of, hey, Mason, you either give me, I think the way Mason comes back, you either got to give him the one, promise him, but it's got to at least be a competition. I look around the league and just see anywhere else. He wouldn't go anywhere and just be the starter anywhere. It's going to be a team that's probably going to draft a quarterback as well. So he's probably going to be in some competition, like a Gardner Minshew gets the opportunity because Anthony Richardson gets hurt, something like that. I just like what Andy Dalton was in Chicago. He got signed, thought he was told he was going to be the starter, and they draft Justin Fields, right? So something like that. And I don't know that that's necessarily the opportunity. He may just, maybe he doesn't have it. And some people think maybe he has animosity. If he does, I wouldn't hold it against him. But you know, Tomlin stuck with him here. He could have easily just yanked him and said, well, you know, the guy doesn't lose his job due to injury and put Kenny back in there. Maybe they don't make the playoffs. This is a guy that just led the team. Everything he says, the way he carries himself and the way he has carried himself precludes to be in a leadership role. Will he ever have the goods? I don't know. What I don't want, Brian, is all these people that are saying draft a guy. If you draft a guy, it's not going to be one of the top.
Who are you going to draft?
And who are you going to sign? Because anybody you sign is going to have to be like a Trubisky type that's going to want to be at least QB2 at the worst. So it's like, you know, I think you make an effort to go back and get Mason. There's some other spots on this roster where, you know, some guys are talking, Chukes Okorafor, thinking, hey, I should be a starter. And it's like, well, you're probably going to get that chance because they're not going to pay you over $10 million to ride the bench next year. Nope. And they still have areas there to fix. And then, of course, one last one, as we're up against it, and something that we're going to have to talk about too. Cam Hayward's been playing with a groin injury. Said he tore it off the bone in training camp. Cam Hayward at $22 million this year and next year as well. 24. He's carrying that high of a cap hit. You didn't hear that one.
Tore it off the bone.
That was Mark Kaboly of The Athletic, I believe, that reported that.
That makes my groin hurt.
That makes anything hurt that's attached to bone, my friend. But it explains, like, it really does explain, like, Cam Hayward, like, did he regress? Can he come back for that? Tyson Alualu was not able to be the same player, but then again, he never was Cam Hayward.
As much as I hate to say it, Cam is reaching the end of the road. You know, that's just natural at some point. Yeah. Do I want Cam to come back? Do I want Cam to have the shot to come back? Sure, I do. But yeah, they're going to have to probably restructure his deal and try and work some weird cat magic to make it happen.
No restructure, I don't think, because I think he enters the final year. Final year of his deal. So there's nothing to restructure unless it's a weird extension with void years.
Void years extension.
Yeah.
I mean, Khan is willing to do some of that stuff now, so you never know. I don't anticipate, unless who knows? I don't even want to speculate, but my guess would be Cam is back and in a way that makes sense. he wants to come back. He wants to try and get back in the playoffs, right? He wants to win a Super Bowl. He wants to win some playoff games. He doesn't want to go out like this. I guarantee you that. But again, he knows his body as well. And if he maybe that's enough. I doubt it. I just think he's not that guy yet, but we'll see.
Yeah, I really don't know either. I mean, those are some big shoes to fill as well. So it's another one that's on the radar. And of course, Cam Hayward doesn't want to play for anyone but Mike Tomlin. TJ Watt doesn't want to. He said that was part of his contract negotiations. That was part of the discussion, is that he plays with Mike Tomlin as his head coach. And maybe Mike Tomlin has that same magic to get somebody like Mason Rudolph. I mean, Mason Rudolph's going to get some offers, right? And we're going to discuss that, the opportunities, the offers, what it might cost to bring him back. It's not going to be a bag of peanuts for like $6 million. I don't think. There's got to be a multi-year deal with some, at least a little bit of guarantees. It's still going to be.
What you said at the beginning is correct. They have to if Mason comes back, it's with the understanding that he has a shot to compete for the starting role, right? Kenny hasn't done anything over the last 2.5 years to make you anoint him at this point, right? And say, oh, absolutely, that we couldn't do better. We couldn't possibly do better. So I'm just telling you, and everybody knows what I say about Mason. I think he's a quality backup, but I don't think he's ever been anything more. I'm just telling you that there's no way he comes back, in my mind, unless they promise him he has a shot to compete.
Yeah. And I'll even say as much. Like, if you would have seen Kenny do what Mason did in those last 4 games, possible with Canada being out the window, he had one Canada less game that was, decent. I'm talking about throwing 2 touchdown passes, protecting the football, something he does well enough, hitting it downfield. He definitely has like an it factor to him. But like you said, they don't have as much invested in this guy. He's still a first-round pick. They've seen what he's maybe capable of. There's maybe potential there. But if you can't tap that potential, I think next year is going to be one of those, this upcoming season in 24, there's still going to be a feeling out period, and then it might be scrapping it all over again for a new quarterback. And who knows what a new incoming offensive coordinator could be like. So, I mean, you saw what the Browns just did. For some reason, Kevin Stefanski's out there, and Kevin Stefanski calls the plays. He's an offensive-minded coach. And they just fired everybody that's like his staff. And I'm like, with 4 quarterbacks playing as well, that was a real head-scratcher for me. There's already people out there yelling about Alex Van Pelt, who played a Pitt and he was with the Steelers, actually, at one point, just like a practice squad or off-season training camp. He came to camp, something like that. So he has a small history with the area, with the organization and whatnot, but he just got fired by the Browns as his offensive coordinator. Now, was he calling the plays? Blah, blah, blah. We know in 2020 that he was the guy that was there because Stefanski was on the couch, COVID, everything like that. But you got to look, they're going to be looking for something. Mike Sullivan has history in the NFL and good history with working with guys, making Josh Freeman look good, making Eli Manning look good, being an offensive coordinator. He called the plays here at the end. I didn't really have much gripes with the play calling other than, a lot of people are going to say, why didn't they just run the freaking football instead of having Mason throw that? Well, that play is probably there because that's what they're expecting. You got some play action finally. You got some things mixed in. Now you get the scrap of Canada playbook and it might be better. So there's a lot of storylines. We probably got more to talk about this offseason now than we did, since Ben retired. We had a whole lot to chew off. Antonio Brown was the gift that kept on giving there for a year or two that we always got to talk about. So we'll definitely be in touch here, folks. This is a midweek show, so we're not going to have another one to close out this week, but we will be back around next week. Flash will be back on as well. He'll offer some of his opinions. We're going to start grinding on some of this. Last thoughts, Brian. Got anybody you're pulling for, especially here the rest of the way?
I mean, I have no choice, right? I called it from the beginning of the season. I kind of have to be rooting for CJ and the Texans. Okay. I mean, I'll tell you what I don't want. I don't want the Ravens to go because I hate them. I don't want Kansas City to go because they've gone already.
Yeah,
so I'd be okay with Josh Allen and the Bills getting there. I would be okay with the Texans getting there.
Mm-hmm.
from the other side of the equation,
Detroit.
I don't care anymore.
Give me Detroit.
The team that I
Exciting.
hated the most is gone. I don't care.
Yeah, Eagles are gone for you. Cowboys are gone too, so I'm a happy camper.
Cowboys. I don't hate the Eagles.
Yeah, I mean, the Detroit Lions. What a great story they are so far with Dan Campbell and everybody that's there.
I don't remember who's left in the NFC. But screw it. Let Baker Mayfield go win a Super Bowl. I don't care. Let him go do it.
Wouldn't that be funny?
It would be hilarious if Baker Mayfield, because he hasn't played that well. Right? I mean, he's played well enough, but he hasn't played that well. But let it be Baker and CJ in the Super Bowl, and then let the rookie win, or as they say in Star Wars, let the Wookiee win.
You got to let the Wookiee win. Well, that's like the guy that was talking to me in Buffalo. I was like, I didn't tell you, we burn down the stadium if we don't win. But yeah. Dude, it's been an interesting season, sometimes very stressful. You should backtrack, though, on Mayfield, at least for this past game. 337 yards and 3 touchdowns is nothing to really sneeze at. So he put some up.
He hasn't played well at all. I just said he hasn't overall the whole season. It's not like he's lighting the world on fire.
And look at that as a scenario, too. And a lot of it's situational.
And go back. Did you watch the game? I watched most. I mean, you were sitting there with me. Yes, I you watched the game. We're sitting there. As with most quarterbacks, Baker got a lot of extra yak on those.
Yeah, well,
those yards,
okay.
Those yards are a hell of a lot more on the receivers than they were on, Baker Mayfield. He threw it for 8 yards and got a 76-yard touchdown.
Yeah, I was like 1 point. Weren't we looking at it? He didn't even have it. Did he finish with 50% completion percentage? He had 61.1, so he improved it a little bit.
At one point, he was like 12 for 27.
Or something like that. Yeah, it was not. It was and Hurts was even worse. Wasn't it like one?
Yeah.
He had like 9 yards of offense or something like that at one point. There's a team.
Baker's not throwing what CJ was throwing.
No. And we should. You know what? I should clarify the reason that you're so hype on CJ Stroud is because Brian, even more so than I am, a big Ohio State fan, big Buckeyes fan. I'm a Buckeyes fan, but once they go into the NFL, it's like, I don't want to hate them, but I'm not really rooting for them. But it'd be fun. The Texans have been
sometimes they're dead to me, like JK dead for me.
Yeah, JK.
Sometimes they're dead to me after they go in the NFL.
Aside from those picks, I'm going to say Buffalo as well because Buffalo beat the Steelers, and it looks a lot more impressive. It also looks impressive that they only lose by 14 points as opposed to some of these other blowouts in some of these games. They didn't give up. They didn't just lay down. And if you're like, hey, the team that won the Super Bowl is the one that beat you, it gives you a lot of like what ifs still that I will at least entertain in my brain for the fun of it. I had something else that was for you. Oh, real mediocre teams, because I was just about to say, like, the Texans have been in mediocrity for a long time. That word gets thrown around a lot.
The Texans have stunk, right?
Yeah.
Mediocrity is not an accurate term for the mediocrity. Is like, well, we're okay, we're not great, we're not really that. No, they stunk.
Are you? Would you say the Steelers have been mediocre?
Yes.
I don't see that word. To me means this. Mediocre means a team that drafting in the top 10, 4 to 6 wins. Never making it to the postseason. I'm talking the Jets. I'm talking the Texans.
8-8 is the definition of mediocre.
Who is?
An 8-8 team is mediocre. They're not terrible.
They're average.
They're not great.
Okay.
They're average. That's what mediocre is.
But I think that term gets thrown around like too much, like the Raiders.
No,
it's like,
stink.
Okay. It's an adjective of a middle quality of but a moderate or low degree of excellence, indifferent, ordinary. So I guess maybe the Raiders are worse than mediocre. You might be right there.
Yes.
I think it's slanderous. And when you look at what Mike Tomlin did, this is where we'll close it. Brooke Pryor of ESPN and Charlie is batch defended her and said, well, she has a job to do. Well, she could have asked a different question unless she's being pressed to do it. Not as bad as the lady who asked Todd Bowles, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers head coach, what they'll do about the weather in Detroit. And he goes, well, they play indoors. You are aware they play indoors. But Brooke Pryor, of course, Mike Tomlin walks off the podium asking about his contract situation. I see it both ways. I see it from us. myself, I don't like when people are just straight up like belligerent or jerks towards players, coaching staff. Even when I don't like somebody, like a Mitch Trubisky, for example. It's not personal. I don't like his play on the field is what I don't like. I try not to be down to a personal level where people are calling Mike Tomlin mediocre. There's nothing mediocre, I think, necessarily about Mike Tomlin. And for Brooke to say to ask a question about that in the heat of that moment, that's a question you ask later this week when he has that press conference, baby. To jump out the gate and just do that there. But also with Mike Tomlin, I think he could have taken the Bill Belichick approach and say, I will neither confirm nor deny or whatever. I will not talk. I will only talk about the game this weekend.
But see, that's the difference. Mike Tomlin is a fiery coach, right? He's a guy that has emotion, right? You've seen it. He sometimes says dumbass things because we're about to unleash hell. That quote has followed him. We will unleash hell in December because he was emotional, right? He said something that didn't really turn out to be true. But, so I'm okay with Brooke Pryor asking the question, and here's why. It's just the way of the world at this point, right? It is a storyline. It has been whether it's a real storyline or some fake ass crap storyline. It's been a storyline for several weeks now. With everybody else leaving, Carroll leaving, Belichick leaving, all this other stuff going on, I totally understand her asking the question, right? And I don't think she did it in a belligerent fashion. But I also totally understand and respect Mike Tomlin's response, which is, I'm out. Don't ask me that right now.
I'm in agreement with you.
I want to say one more thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
I agree with you 100%. When I say the Steelers have been mediocre, because the Steelers as a whole, as a team, have been mediocre. But they probably actually stink. The reason that they've been mediocre is Mike Tomlin is not a mediocre coach. He has the ability to raise them above the level of their play. You don't go 8-8 with Duck Hodges, all right, and be a mediocre coach. You don't lose the middle of your defense and end up with a 10-7 record if you're a mediocre coach. You end up 4-13 or something. The team itself probably this year was not very good, considering everything that was going on. Does he make mistakes? Yes. Should he have fired Canada earlier? Should he have probably never kept Canada on? Yes. All those things are true. But as far as a guy who leads your team and finds ways to win, he is that guy. I don't think he's a mediocre coach. I do think the team is probably a subpar or was a subpar team this year, considering the situations that they found themselves in.
Yeah, and he has to play to certain strengths. He probably has to answer to a higher power within this organization, whether that's Art Rooney II or Omar Khan. Why aren't you going to play Mitch Trubisky if he plays Mason Rudolph right out the gate over a guy that, was owed? It would have saved $10 million, and they decided to bring this guy back. And they probably didn't think he was going to be this bad, at least. And
I don't
understand.
Nobody thought he was going to be this bad.
But it's the business of football. It's the politics of football aside that you got to absolutely burn this one to the ground to make sure, okay, now I can make this decision instead. And it takes a lot of intestinal fortitude to sit the guy you put the first round pick on, that you anointed the starter in training camp. He goes and gets a quick surgery to be able to turn around and come right back to play and maybe give you a chance to win, and hold him off on the bench and on the sidelines. And I'm going to tell you, I think that does Kenny a lot of good, because if he goes out to Buffalo and ultimately fails, his fan base immediately, there isn't anybody that's going to want to see Kenny Pickett. It's going to be the storyline the next 6 months in through the summer. And this guy's a bum. He shouldn't be the starter. Get somebody else if that is the decision. I think most people will at least be comfortable seeing him and Rudolph the way this played out. Tomlin took a lot of guts to not just, okay, Mason, I let you play. That's it. You know what I mean? And then maybe misses the playoffs. And he coaches this team up to get them into that position to go on a little bit of a winning streak. This was not easy. They had to go into Seattle and win on the road. They had to go to Baltimore and win on the road. And then they had to go and play in Buffalo in bad conditions and every one of those situations is like the optimal conditions for that home team where they have to go on the road and play those guys, and they come out and they compete. And, Mike Tomlin's capable of doing that. They had Michael Walker, Eric Rowe, Miles Jack off the couch, Trenton Thompson somewhere on the practice squad. These are the guys that they're going to battle with. And like you said, with Duck Hodges and Johnny Holton and whatever else, that Benny Snell and all these guys, I'm just going to leave it at that.
As they say.
Volunteer, not a hostage. I should have made that shirt. That's kind of cool one. So
that's a Kaya Tomlin.
Oh,
shirt.
Is that Tomlin's daughter? Cool stuff. Yeah. Well, we're up against it, my friend. Got a little bit more out of this than we thought we were going to, but there is still a lot to chew on. There's going to be naysayers and people who nitpick this. Let me tell you, it's like I don't like the argument of, well, if Tomlin leaves, who do you get? But I think there's at least one more year here, because I think there's one more year Kenny Pickett. There may be if you bring Rudolph back, you got him at least a solid year. It might be a multi-year deal with an out where, that's the same thing Trubisky had. Trubisky was getting a lot more in year 2 because they sign him. What if this guy becomes the starter and does well? You still got maybe another year of Cam Hayward. Maybe Cam has it restructured. They'll probably pay him all his money. The Steelers have done it in the past with like Troy Polamalu and Ben, and they just find a way to massage that number so they free up some cap space. It depends on his, like you said, his body. He turns 35 in May. But, TJ Watt, some of these guys that go to bat, you got at least, I think, a year of Tomlin if they don't extend him. The toughest thing will be who wants to come here and coach for just 1 year. He is legendary, so it's something that's on the resume, but it's not exactly job security for folks who maybe coaches that are younger, that have just started families, that have just, young kids, and you got to put them in school systems and stuff. They might want something that has a little more meat to it, a little more longevity to it. So if they do get somebody that's a retread, that's a 60-year-old, whatever, offensive coordinator, that's going to be the reasons why. There's a lot of personal decisions that go into the personnel decision. See what I did there, Brian?
I did. I will tell you, I believe the Steelers want to extend Mike Tomlin. I believe that during this offseason, they will make every attempt to extend Mike Tomlin. But it also is very possible at this point in time that Mike Tomlin wants to operate somewhat with year-to-year expectations. A little more flexibility, not because he maybe wants to go someplace else, but the dude's been doing it for 17 years.
Yeah, it's a grind.
At some point, you got enough money, you got enough of a reputation, you're going into Hall of Fame when you're done. And, maybe, as they say, you get on with your life's work, right? As Chuck Noll used to say. I don't know. I believe the fire that you saw in that post-game interview would lead me to believe Mike Tomlin's not done yet, right? He's got more left in, as Rocky said in that one Rocky Balboa movie. He's like, I got a little something in the basement still left in the basement. I gotta get to work out my basement stuff. And so maybe I believe he probably wants to come back next year. I believe that's what he told the players, and I believe that the Steelers would like to have him back and would like to have an extension so that it is not a lame duck situation where it's year to year and he's at the end of the year he's finished. For the very reason you said, it's very difficult to hire coaches if you know the regime is going to turn over in a year, or there's a risk of it turning over in a year. There's always a risk of it, right?
Yeah.
Except here.
Yep. Hey, I got one more for you. Daniel Valente, stats guy Daniel. We'll give him a little shout here because he projected Mason Rudolph's 4-game stretch over 17 games. And put that up on the screen. 68.2% completion percentage for 4,016 passing yards, 21 touchdowns with 4 picks, 8.6 yards per attempt, a 106 passer rating. For comparison, Pickett and Trubisky have combined for 21 passing TDs since 2022. That's the reason why, you're not going to say necessarily.
I'm going to go with what you said earlier. I don't know how you factor in Matt Canada calling plays for the first X number of games.
I know.
those kind of stats are pro football focus or whatever PFFs. That's why what's his name PFF Sam blocked me, and screw you, you loser, big chicken. Anyway, that's pure speculation and projection because you cannot calculate for the fact that Matt Canada was going to wreck a lot of that and basically be like, no, I want you to do this.
Yeah, you can't calculate. There might be a game where he throws 3 or 4 touchdowns. They blow the doors off someone. There might be a game where he doesn't throw one at all. But he did play in like some conditions too. So, there's all kind of variables and factors. So I take it at face value, but that's a 4,000 yard passer. That's respectable.
I take it with a very large grain of, not just a grain of salt. I take it with a semi truck filled with salt.
Oh, geez, that's a little too much. I mean, sometimes it's what you got. It's a sample size.
That's not a slight to Mason. That's the fact you're limited by Matt Canada.
Yeah.
That's what that is.
I hear you. Well, as far as Kenny, that's why I agree, and that's why I'm not completely out on Kenny. I am not a pick guy whatsoever. I'm not like the rah-rah. He did whatever in college. I understand he's a little older, small hands, all this other crap that people say. But
hands don't have anything to do with anything.
He's a gamer, and somebody you definitely should have kicked the tires and take a shot on. Because imagine if he goes somewhere else then, and he lights it up. He goes to New Orleans, and for whatever reason, they actually have a semblance of an offense. That's been a problem for them this past year.
Drew Brees too, right?
Yeah, something. Yeah.
Little teeny hands.
There's certainly plenty of people we've been disappointed in. There's some that not so much. And usually the reclamation projects usually don't. I understand they come from whatever situation it isn't ideal. They usually end up in yet another not so ideal situation. Baker in Carolina definitely exemplifies that versus Baker in Tampa. So anyways, Brian, that'll do it for us, folks.
Well, wait, I got to get my last 2 seconds in before, so the 2%ers can complain that we never end when we're supposed to end. But I want to give a shout out to Marcus Golden, right? Considering the vet edge rushers that we have signed the last couple years who have come in and been gigantic pains in the ass, Marcus Golden went through this year as a professional and did his job and was there. And so I actually want to give kudos to him. And I appreciate that. That's all. I just want to say that before we got
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's 32 years old. So it's not, we'll talk about this with the free agents, who you want back type show, et cetera, et cetera. Folks, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Leave a rating or review wherever you may be watching or listening. We appreciate all of yous following us throughout the season. Don't forget, tell some friends. Help us grow a little bit more so we can continue bringing this stuff to you. We're probably looking at a schedule where it's, it's a podcast 1 week, it's 2 shows another week, something off and on like that. There's only so much we can talk about, but we will be looking forward to some of the games coming up this weekend. And we'll probably talk about those some as well on the show. So make sure you.
I got another one.
Okay, one more.
This is truly for the 1%ers who are here right now. In the comments, just tell me, when do you want me to start doing mock draft insanities? Because I can do them very quickly, and at the end of any podcast I'm on, we could just go, and here's a ridiculous mock draft that could have happened. Until we get to the real one where we do the whole show.
I hate doing anything draft until the combine, at least.
I know, but that's why
people are doing it now. We don't even know
there's guys in there that have gone back to college. They didn't declare.
I know. Entering the transfer portal. So I think the Steelers are picking 20th overall again. So right back. Greg Wolfley made a good point about that as well. He said, the Steelers, they've never had one of these burn it to the ground moments where you have the first or second pick overall. You get to do what the Texans did, or you're in a position where the Bears are, or anything like that. They've kept this going, mediocre, as some people may say, by picking in the bottom half of these rounds every single year for practically, since 2003. No losing seasons since 2003. So it actually extends beyond Mike Tomlin's tenure as the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. That'll do it for us, folks, for sure this time. Thank you. If you listened to this far, give Brian a shout out. Give us a shout out. Also, you could always send us some stuff, texts, emails, whatever, through the site. And let us know what you might want us to talk about as well. Drop some stuff in the comments. Till next time, my name's Joe. His name's Brian. We encourage everyone out there to be safe, be good, and we'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.